everyone, and welcome back to this third part on tissue fitting a pattern. So in the last episode we saw how I put the pattern on my body and made a couple changes, and now I'm going to show you how I'm going to put those changes into effect on the pattern. A couple things I want to talk about before I start was I want to recommend this book. It's called Fit for Real People by Palmer and Pletch. And I found it really helpful. This is basically a book about tissue fitting and all the changes you might have to make. Because I was thinking about how I really didn't have to make all that many changes on mine. And you might be thinking, well, what if I have to do this and this and this? And if you go through this book, it'll tell you. And they show you, it's kind of a hokey looking book, but the information is really great. And it shows you on real people the changes they might have to make and how they do it on the pattern. So full bust adjustment, small bust adjustment, sway back, anything you can think of, it's going to be in here. So I highly recommend this, and I will add a link to this book so you can find it yourself. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that I was looking at the video of the last episode, and I noticed that the pattern was pulling just a little bit to the outside of the waist. So it made me think that maybe I did need a little extra room there in the waist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the seam allowance bigger on the sides. So I want to have an inch wide seam allowance rather than the typical 5/8 of an inch that's included with the pattern. So that means I need to add 3/8 of an inch to each side, which is a very simple thing to do. So how I'm going to start, and a couple supplies you need to make these changes. You remember I need to make that change to the shoulder, and then I'm going to add that extra width at the side seams. So I just got a couple pieces of regular computer paper, that's all you really need. Tape. If you don't have one of these rulers, you really need one because they come in really handy for me all the time. It's 2 by 18 inches, it's clear, but it has grids on it, so you can work with it. Pattern making, I use it for everything. So, okay. So I have my pieces, I've taken front and back pattern pieces, I've taken them apart, have them down on the table. So let's just start with the front piece. So I'm going to take the dart out. Remember I had the dart pinned in here? I'm going to unpin that dart. I'm going to take a pattern piece, piece of paper, not a pattern piece, put it behind this pattern piece here. I'm kind of going to rearrange it so that it fits on here. And the first thing you want to do is just get it so it stays on the paper. Just tape it a couple times. Okay, and I can do a more precise job once I finish this. Now I need a pencil. It's not working yet. I like to use these Bic mechanical pencils for pattern making stuff because they're thin and really precise. So you can see what I've got going on here is this pattern piece taped to the piece of computer paper. And all I need to do now is add 3/8 of an inch to the side seam. So I'm going to take my clear ruler, I'm going to put it on here so that it's 3/8 of an inch wider, and then just draw in that seam like that. As you can see, this has the French dart out to the side, so I need to just draw around this entire curve here. I'm sorry, this entire dart here, down to the bottom of the piece. And then I want to connect it at the bottom. And I want to go out here from the... So hopefully you can see what I've done here is just make this 3/8 of an inch wider at the side seam, and that's all. And now I'm going to cut out my new pattern. Okay, so there it is. You can see that I've got that extra width on the side there. And obviously now I've got a weird shape here, and I can just trim around there and tape it down a little better, tape it down on the back. You get the point. So that's just going to give me that extra little width there on the side. And I'm going to want to do, and you'll notice I'm not fitting the skirt in this video series, and that's because it's a huge skirt and it's not going to need a lot of fitting. It's a full circle, so it's definitely going to fit my hips. But the thing I'm going to want to do now is because this seam connects at the waist, I'm going to want to add another 3/8 of an inch to the side seam of the skirt too. Okay, and then the next thing we talked about was the shoulder seam, which I wanted to move forward just a little. And you can actually see on this dress that I'm wearing that I made that you can probably see how I should have done it on this dress, because here's my shoulder seam on my dress, but my shoulder bone, I should really figure out what the name of this bone actually is right here. So again, I really could have moved this forward maybe in ½ inch, which is exactly what I'm doing on this dress that I'm making now. So you remember that I made that pin, I marked it with a pin where my shoulder bone was falling on the pattern piece, and so I put it down. Let me just pin this so it doesn't flop around. Okay, so when I put it down and I measured the piece with my ruler, here's my ruler, so I made a straight line across the shoulder seam, and then I measured where the pin was, and I saw that it was ½ inch in. So I measured that, I drew a line, and that's the new shoulder seam. Now, that's where the shoulder seam is going to fall. I'm going to need to add another 5/8 of an inch for the seam allowance. So I'm just going to take my pencil here and draw up 5/8 of an inch. So it's just a straight line. And all I need to do is cut off that pattern piece. So there we go. I took ½ an inch off of that shoulder piece. Now I need to add the same amount to the back bodice piece of the shoulder, because it's just moving that seam up. It's not making it smaller. So here's my back piece, and obviously I'm going to make this the side seam bigger on the back piece as well. But I'll do that after this. I already demonstrated on the front. But I do need to add that ½ an inch to the shoulder seam. So all I'm going to do is put it down on a piece of paper, tape it down. So you can see I just kind of slapped it down on a piece of paper where I knew I'd have enough room to work. And I'm going to take my ruler, stuff all over it. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to add ½ an inch to that shoulder seam. So I'm just drawing ½ an inch here. Can you see my line there? And then I'm going to carry up that side seam with my ruler, and that's all there is to it. That's my new shoulder seam. And I'm going to cut around this. And there's my new pattern piece with just an extended back shoulder seam. To compensate for my rounded forward shoulders. And that's all there is to it. And the great thing about this alteration is you don't need to change the position of the sleeve, the set-in sleeve at all, because it rotates forward just a little bit. You're still going to match the top of the sleeve to the shoulder seam. And that's it. So I think that's all. I'll give you a link to that book I mentioned, but from now, I'm ready to go ahead and cut out my pattern pieces because I feel confident that I've got a good fit here, and that, through measuring the pattern flat and then making those, doing the fitting and seeing how it was going to fit, and then, I had to reevaluate at one point, say, okay, maybe I do need a little extra width and just have a little extra seam allowance there in case I need it. And I feel confident, even without making a muslin, and, as I've said on my blog, there are times I would definitely make a muslin, but this is such a simple pattern, and I've used Vogue patterns before, I generally know what my fitting issues are, that this tissue fitting is going to be fine for me. We hope. So, sewing can be unpredictable sometimes, though, don't you think? So, I'm going to go ahead and make this up. This is my last episode in this little mini-series, but of course I will post pictures of the dress on my blog, which is www.blogforbettersewing.com. So, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll be back with more blogs soon. Vlogs, even.